Hello everyone, my name is Nataraj and I work as a principal engineer in the security solutions team at Target. Joining me today is Manish Khedawat, who is our lead engineer with identity and access solutions. We are excited to talk about our journey towards passwordless authentication. Here is how our agenda is going to look like for the next 20 to 25 minutes. We'll spend the first few minutes talking about the enterprise authentication strategy at Target. We'll then move on to the story on how and why we started exploring FIDO and what were some of the steps that we took to roll this out. Once we had FIDO in place, we integrated it with our existing authentication ecosystem. And we'll cover more details on that when we go through the integration and rollout. We'll also go through some of the next steps that we're working towards to implement a few other use cases using FIDO while improving the user experience. Finally, we'll summarize some of the key takeaways from this presentation, which may help you when you implement FIDO in your organization. Target's identity and access management team constantly explores new technologies, solutions, and techniques with the goal to provide a simple, seamless, and a secure login experience to target team members who access multiple applications integrated with our single sign-on platform. To simplify the authentication process, one of the first things that we had to do was to modernize our platforms and processes. Adoption of open standards enabled applications to easily onboard to our SSO platform, providing a consistent and a secure login experience across applications at Target. To provide a seamless experience to the users, we had to reduce friction wherever possible, be it in the authentication flow by reducing the dependencies on password, or in the onboarding process by making it easier for applications and business owners to easily consume the enterprise authentication services. Our single sign-on platform is integrated with risk-based multi-factor authentication solution that provides contextual experiences driven by risk. Support for a wide variety of authenticators makes it possible for team members to choose from a wide variety of authenticators and avoids a scenario where they are not able to move forward just because they did not have a specific authenticator at that time. For example, I may not always carry my cell phone with me and may not be able to receive the one-time password sent over the SMS or voice or answer the push notification. But I should still be able to move forward with the login process if I had my registered security key or by using my on-device biometrics. And so began our quest towards expanding the portfolio of our strong authenticators. Any new authenticator that we introduced at Target had to adhere to some of our core principles. It had to be on open standards, making the solution interoperable with different other platforms at Target, while also aligning with our authentication strategy. Industry acceptance, good community engagement, and support is crucial for the success of any open standard. Some standards die over a period of time because of lack of adoption and can create maintainability issues for the organizations that have actually implemented them. The solution must provide strong authentication while reducing friction, which is very, very important. We've previously seen that most high assurance authenticators also introduce some friction in the login process and may not get a wider acceptance. A bonus would be if the solution supports our passwordless vision. And so we came across FIDO. FIDO is an acronym for Fast Identity Online, which is an open and a scalable standard for achieving simpler and stronger authentication. The solution has leverages public key cryptography at its core and provides protections against phishing and man-in-the-middle attacks. At Target, it all started with the hackathon event, where we first built a prototype of a FIDO server. We also integrated it with the SSO platform in the development environment, which really helped us in validating that FIDO could be a good fit in our enterprise authentication ecosystem. FIDO2 in particular was of a greater interest to us, given its WebAuthn API that is baked into most modern browsers, enabling the use of external security keys or on-device biometrics without the need of installing any third-party software or a plugin on my device or on the browser. Now that we had a very good understanding about FIDO, we identified a few use cases at Target where we could use FIDO for. It can be used as for providing additional verification in our multi-factor authentication flow. It can be used as a primary authenticator and can completely eliminate passwords from the login equation. It can be used for native authentication to mobile applications, providing a very intuitive login experience for our mobile users. It can be used as a step-up authenticator for sensitive transactions, such as accessing payroll or health information. Finally, it can be used during the continuous authentication process as well, where a re-authentication may be required when the user is moving from a low to a medium or a high-risk application. A re-authentication may also be required when there is a significant change in the contextual attributes of the user or the device. In such cases, using FIDO for re-authentication will be a lot less friction when compared to the other authentication methods. Now that we had all our use cases identified, the next thing that we had to decide was whether to build our own server or to use an open source or a commercial server. After a lot of research and analysis, we decided to build our own. And here are some of the reasons why. The success that we had during the 48-hour hackathon gave us a lot of confidence to move forward. Also, at the time when we were first exploring FIDO, there were hardly any FIDO2 certified servers available. There were some key considerations for building a FIDO server at Target. It had to be secure by design, with security built into the system from the ground up, meeting all security and compliance requirements at Target. Portability was another important factor. The solution should be easy to package and deploy on virtual machines or containers without any code changes or having to consider about any performance impacts. The solution should be extensible and also flexible for accommodating new capabilities and features. It should also easily fit in our CI/CD pipeline with automated testing and deployment. I'll now hand it over to Manish to talk more about our FIDO server, our certification journey, and rollout of FIDO at Target. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you, Nataraj. Hello, everyone. Now that we had decided to build our own FIDO server, we had to start with setting up 4 API endpoints. First two were pre-register and register. Enrollment process of any FIDO authenticator involves interaction with pre-register or register endpoint. Some may also call them as attestation options or attestation results, respectively. To initiate an enrollment, client device makes a pre-registered call telling server, hey, I want to enroll. Server replies back with randomly created challenge and configuration required for key pair generation. Client device then communicates with authenticator, gets key pair generated, challenge signed. Finally, the public key portion of the key pair is sent to server over register call to complete the enrollment. Next two were pre-authenticate and authenticate. During authentication process, client device makes a pre-authenticate call telling server, hey, I want to authenticate. Server replies back with randomly created challenge. Client device then communicates with previously registered authenticator to get challenge signed and passes it back to server over authenticate call. Finally, FIDO server verifies the signature and relevant metadata to determine if user is authenticated. Now, at Target, we wanted team members to be able to manage their authenticators via a self-service portal. So we wrote two additional endpoints. Get keys would fetch all registered keys for the user, and delete key would help in removal of previously registered authenticator as part of our recovery process. Now, let's talk about how did we implement the same. As Nataraj earlier called out, our first attempt at building FIDO server was at Target's internal hackathon event. We developed a FIDO2 prototype with support for U2F, which enabled the use of security keys in our step-up authentication system. You could use YubiKey as an alternative to push notification. Next step for us was to extend the solution to support biometrics. Chrome had recently announced support for Touch ID on MacBook Pro, and that had created a lot of excitement around us. Implementation wise, most of the code remained same except for the part where we had to add logic to extract authentication flags, which indicated whether a single factor or a two factor authentication has been performed. Think of single factor as simply tapping a security key, and two factor would be where you use biometrics or enter PIN along with tapping the security key. Next, we learned about attestations as we were maturing our FIDO server. Attestations establish trust in an authenticator. What does this mean to us, right? Think of a scenario. An authenticator comes and say, hey, I'm YubiKey4 and I want to enroll. Server will say, sure, provide your attestation certificate. Authenticator will do so during enrollment. Server will go and validate that certificate against the root certificate of Yubico, the parent company, to make sure Authenticate is really a YubiKey4. How do we benefit from this, right? So every FIDO2 authenticator has a unique identifier from the manufacturer. If we intend to restrict an authenticator based on certification levels or its capabilities, we could leverage that unique identifier to look up against metadata from FIDO Alliance. Metadata. It is a storehouse that provides details such as vendor-based authenticator ID, certification levels, or root certificate chains on all FIDO certified authenticators. Now, at this point, we had a fully functional FIDO server and we started working towards building trust and confidence. So, getting our server formally certified by FIDO Alliance became our next goal. Coming to certification, first step for certification was to pass self-validation conformance tests. During this process, a UI tool is provided to validate if our server meets the required specification. We love this tool. Even today, we use it for unit testing our server every single time we make a change. Once we passed all mandatory tests, which were about 160 the last time we used it, we were able to upload our test results to FIDO Alliance, which made us eligible for next phase of certification, interoperability testing. Interoperability testing is a quarterly event where participating companies test their servers against authenticators of several vendors. The good thing about this is that it can happen virtually and an in-person participation is not required. The ultimate step to certification is getting some paperwork done, and next thing you know, celebrate. Your server is now FIDO certified. And hey, here is us. Once we had a production ready server, we couldn't wait to roll it out. So let's talk about how did we integrate the same. As shown in the slides, all user requests get channeled through logon service, which does the orchestration between various components during authentication process. In case of being FIDO as a primary authenticator, logon service interacts with FIDO service to achieve passwordless authentication. Once validation is successful, authentication service creates session and redirects the user back to the calling application. In case of FIDO being used as a step-up authenticator, logon service consults with risk service to understand associated risk with current transaction based on device or user attributes. If determined risk is higher than normal, then logon service communicates with strong authentication service to list down all the available step-up authenticator for the user. Finally, when a step-up is successful, authentication service creates a session and redirects the user back to the calling application. After integrating FIDO, we rolled it out as a step-up authenticator in our multi-factor authentication process. Registration of a FIDO authenticator, whether biometrics or security key, was made possible by showing an optional enrollment screen once team member is successfully authenticated. Towards the end of registration process, team member is prompted to enter a friendly name so as to be able to recognize the authenticator during next login. Integrating FIDO in our login flow was a first good step to get users onboarded. But soon we realized that there is no way for a team member to enroll additional authenticator or remove the current one in case device is lost or stolen. At Target, we had a portal called My Login, where team members can manage their authenticators. For example, you could reset your questions and answers, or you can enroll a push authenticator. Adding FIDO to My Login was a no-brainer. Further, to improve adoption, communication was done through newsletters, collaboration channels, and demo days. Demo Day is a science fair style showcase of Target Teamworks, which happens every quarter. We also built a micro portal to educate users about FIDO and its uses at Target. This certainly improved the adoption as users became aware of FIDO and its benefits. Finally, we are now rolling out FIDO as a primary authenticator. It is available to small set of pilot users. Bringing FIDO all the way to front makes us achieve a truly passwordless experience while ensuring strong authentication. However, we do require that biometrics or security key with PIN be used as a primary authenticator. Now, let me hand it back to Nataraj to talk about learnings we had at Target. Over to you, Nataraj.
Thanks, Manish. All right. With FIDO being available as a step-up authenticator for quite some time, and now being available as a primary authenticator for a group of pilot users, we have had quite a few learnings, and we'll call out some of those learnings now. Building and implementing a FIDO server is not as hard, but adoption can definitely be a challenge. The myths around biometrics, the device and the browser support, insufficient awareness on the FIDO standard can all become issues for adoption. Awareness can definitely speed up adoption, as we have seen that most users were interested in switching to FIDO when they came to know about it. Telemetry is precious. When we first rolled out FIDO as a step-up authenticator, we had poor visibility into the usage and adoption. We could only tell how many users had enrolled by just making a query against the backend database. Later, we added some additional telemetry that helped us identify if the device even supports FIDO or not, whether the user chose a password-based authentication method when he had a passwordless option available. All of this helped us in identifying some of the pain points in the process. Enrollment of new authenticators and managing existing authenticators should be made simple as well as secure. At Target, we allowed the FIDO enrollment through My Login, a portal that our users were already familiar with. A self-service portal like My Login, allows user to enroll additional authenticators and also unenroll the existing authenticator if the device is lost or stolen. Which takes us to the next section, recovery. Security keys can be lost or stolen, and previously registered devices with on-device biometrics may get reimaged or formatted, which erases the private key from the device. In such cases, it's important that we provide alternate methods of authentications to our users so that they can still continue forward with the authentication process. We also have to consider making it easier for the users to enroll new additional authenticators and also to unenroll the previously registered authenticators if they are no longer required. A self-service can clearly be a winner here. So what's next for us? Every application has some level of risk associated with it. Let's say low, medium, or high. It all depends on the business criticality, whether the application is externally accessible, the sensitivity of the data that the application handles, and a few other factors. FIDO authenticators also have a certification level associated with them based on the requirements published by FIDO Alliance. This certification level, level 1, 2, 3, and so on, is available as part of the metadata sent to our server on every single request. We could use this metadata in order to enforce and validate that a certain level of authenticator was used during the authentication process based on the application as well as on the transaction risk. Users may have multiple on-device biometric authenticators enrolled against the FIDO server. For example, I may have my MacBook Pro with the Touch ID and a Windows 10 device with a fingerprint reader, both enrolled against our FIDO server. In such cases, it would be nice if my login experience is able to detect the operating system and provide me with the relevant option instead of providing me with both options. We are having discussions on building a FIDO SDK that can be bundled with the mobile applications at Target to provide stronger and faster authentication to our mobile users. Since we already have a risk engine in place, we are having discussions on building a capability that would evaluate the risk as a user moves from one application to another during a single sign-on process. In those cases, using FIDO for re-authentication will be a lot less friction to the users. To summarize what we have covered so far, we've heard over and over again that passwords are no longer considered secure and should either be replaced or supplemented with additional authentication methods. We all know that it's not easy to get rid of passwords immediately, but let's all take a step towards it. It's very important to ensure proper communication and awareness so that your users understand the benefits of FIDO from both a security as well as a usability standpoint. This will definitely improve the adoption. Certification process is not as hard, and we've got good support from FIDO Alliance whenever we had any questions or had sought some clarification. Conformance test is something that we continue to run after every single change to our FIDO server, just to make sure that our server still meets the specifications. Whether you build your own FIDO server or choose to use an open source or a commercial server, you can still run the conformance tests against your server just to make sure that your server is still working as intended. Several open source FIDO2 servers are available today. A simple search on Google will give you a lot of options to try out. Having a well-defined recovery process is very helpful. Security keys can be lost and on-device biometrics may not always be available. A fallback option of using an alternate authenticator method should be available to the user, and also a self-service portal for managing the FIDO authenticators will be very useful. That takes us to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions or need more discussion, please reach out to us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you.